Hare Krishna devotees.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Mother Mukti Datri, would you mind singing Jai Radha Madhava? I'm trying to reach Briyat Mridanga Prabhu. He is on the list to give class today, but he's not here yet.
Okay.
Do you mind just singing Jai Radha Madhava?
Okay, Mataji, I will do that.
Thank you.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण
कृष्ण।
जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर स्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। नंदे हरि हरि। All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
हरे
Glories to the
कृष्ण
assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna. So, looks like we are going to, I'm going to request Charuchandra Prabhu to please help us today. There's been some misunderstanding, I think. Brihat Mridanga Prabhu was supposed to be on today, but he's not. So what we can do is, I'm just going to call on a few volunteers to recite the Prananath Prabhu, are you there?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, if you can recite the verse 3 times, then all of us will recite the verse, then we'll read the translation and purport, and then Charuchandra Prabhu has kindly agreed to facilitate a discussion.
Sure, Mataji.
Thank you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We are reading, studying, and discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 25. I'll recite the shloka 3 times. Idanim dharmapadaste satyam nirvartayed yataha tam jigrukshati adharmoyam amrutena idhita kalhi. Idanim dharmapadaste satyam nirvartayed yata tam jigrukshati adharmoyam anrutena idhita kali. Idanim dharmapadaste satyam nirvartayed yata tam jigrukshati adharmoyam anrutena idhita kali. Anyone wants to recite?
Go ahead, devotees.
Hare Krishna. Idanim dharma padaste shatyam nirvartayeditaha tam jigrashati adharmoyam anretenadita dhitaha kalihi.
Idanim dharmapadaste satyam nirvartayat yata tam jigrakshatya dharmoyam anretenaidite kalai. Sorry.
Idanim dharma padaste satyam nirvartayed yata tam jigrachyat adharmoyam anre te naidita kali.
Hare Krishna. Idanim dharma padaste sattam nivartayet ayajata tam jigritakshi adharma ayam anritena etidikali. Hare Krishna.
I'll read the synonyms translation. Idanim, at the present moment. Dharma, O personality of religion. Pada, leg. Te, of you. Satyam, truthfulness. Nirvartayet, hobbling along somehow or other. Yata, whereby. Tam, that. Jigrikshati, trying to destroy. Adharma, the personality of irreligion. I am this. Anratena, by deceit. Edita, flourishing. Kali, quarrel personified. Translation. You are now standing on one leg only, which is your truthfulness, and you are somehow or other hobbling along. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. The principles of religion do not stand on some dogmas or man-made formulas, but they stand on four primary regulative observances, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. Austerity means to accept voluntarily things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but are conducive for spiritual realization. For example, fasting. Fasting twice or 4 times a month is a sort of austerity which may be voluntarily accepted for spiritual realization only, and not for any other purposes, political or otherwise. Fastings which are meant not for self-realization but for some other purposes are condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 17:5 and 6. Similarly, cleanliness is necessary both for the mind and for the body. Simply bodily cleanliness may help to some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary, and it is effected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. No one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. A godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God, and for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have good qualifications, however they may be materially equipped. We have to see things by their resultant action. The resultant action of human civilization in the age of Kali is dissatisfaction. So everyone is anxious to get peace of mind. This peace of mind was complete in the Satya age because of the existence of the above mentioned attributes of the human beings. Gradually, these attributes have diminished in the Treta Yuga to 3/4, in the Dwapara to half, and in this age of Kali to 1/4, which is also gradually diminishing on account of prevailing untruthfulness. By pride, either artificial or real, the resultant action of austerity is spoiled. By too much affection for female association, cleanliness is spoiled. By too much addiction to intoxication, mercy is spoiled. And by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled. The revival of Bhagavad Dharma can save human civilization from falling prey to evils of all description. So, Charachandra Prabhu.
Yes, thank you. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravana Vicharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarne Om Adgyanati Mirandasya Gyanandjana Shilakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing on, and this is another great purport. This one in particular, because we've been hearing about these 4 pillars of religion and the 4 pillars of sinful life. That's been a recurring theme in this section. And this one at the end of this purport really drives it home what they represent and how they affect us. But what I think I'll do is we'll just go through this purport again, point by point, and we'll elaborate on some of that, and then we'll see if there are any questions or further discussion. So first off, Srila Prabhupada points out that the principles of religion do not stand on some dogmas or man-made formulas, but they stand on 4 primary regulative observances, which are austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So this sentence, of course, reminds me of this verse we've been quoting a lot, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina, that if, well, the verse is speaking about devotional service in particular, but anything which is not based on the Shastra, the Shruti, the Smriti, the Purana, it will create unnecessary disturbances in society. So this sentence here, talking about the principles of religion, Srila Prabhupada's pointing out that it's not based on fanaticism, traditional belief that's not backed by Shastra or mental concocted ideas of how we think, we as conditioned souls think society should run. No, real religion is actually based on these things: austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And throughout this purport, Srila Prabhupada explains how actually these things are necessary for actual religion to flourish. Let's see. Yeah, I was going to get into each of those, but actually Srila Prabhupada breaks it down, so I'll wait on that. So the first thing, after Srila Prabhupada lists these, is he mentions that the mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. So here Srila Prabhupada is talking about samskaras, right? So every one of us, no matter what culture or background we grew up in, we have these impressions that have been left in our consciousness and our subconsciousness. So, that being said, some of us don't even remember where these impressions come from, but we have experienced many things through, from the time we were born till now, that affects the way we act. The very powerful impressions of things that we've observed, again, either consciously or unconsciously, that affect the way we are. They build up our character for who we are, for better or for worse. Sometimes this is a good thing, sometimes this is a bad thing. Right? So sometimes we'll witness some sort of activity, and we'll take an impression from that. We'll draw our conclusions from that based on logic and experience, and that will affect how we behave for the rest of our lives. Again, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But these things, these impressions, should actually be regulated. Because if we want to live a proper lifestyle, properly engaging in Krishna's service without personal motivation, without being interrupted, then we need to establish proper samskars or proper impressions that will drive us to always, or not, it can't drive us to always do it, but it will draw us to tend to always make a righteous decision in whatever we're dealing with, right? So these samskars that are to be taught from childhood, these are quite important, and these just show that these different stepping stone, or these different milestones in our life, that Krishna is the center, and that we are to acknowledge him and worship him as the center, and understand that we are not the center. So all these different special occasions that come up, we see them as milestones, but we see them as, Krishna being the center, and then how we act accordingly. So then Srila Prabhupada, he starts breaking these down one by one. So first he talks about austerity. Austerity means to accept voluntary things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but are conducive for spiritual realization. For example, fasting. Let's see. Okay, so I'll read the rest of that on austerity, and then we can break that down, because even that sentence we can break down, but let's finish the idea first. So fasting twice or 4 times a month is a sort of austerity which may be voluntarily accepted for spiritual realization only, and not for any other purposes, political or otherwise. Fastings which are meant which are meant not for self-realization, but for some other purposes, are condemned in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verses 5 and 6. So, austerity meaning to voluntarily accept things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but they are conducive for spiritual realization. So austerity means that, literally it means it's the external representation of us trying to redirect our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric. So what that means is you may not see that connection based on what we just read and what I just said, but the connection is that when we do our daily activities just based on our sense gratification, thinking ourselves the center, we do things that we consider are comfortable, right? But if we have the knowledge from Shastra, from Guru, from sadhus, that what we're doing normally isn't actually very conducive for spiritual life, then we can do something that's outside of our comfort zone. That's called austerity. But as mentioned before, and then as also Srila Prabhupada mentions, that it has to be conducive for spiritual realization. It can't just be uncomfortable for the body, but conducive for some other bodily condition. Like, for example, many of us have jobs, and most of the people that I know actually don't like their jobs very much. So it is a form of austerity where we undergo some discomfort for the time being, but we get rewarded with, either extra pay or vacation time, or just the benefit of being able to support our family, to keep them fed, healthy, happy, etc. But that's not the austerity that is being spoken about here. That's a material austerity, that's giving up one thing to get another material result. So giving up one material comfort to get a better material result. That's a different sort of austerity. This austerity, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out, so after he speaks about fasting, he says that it has to be for spiritual realization only, not for other purposes, political or otherwise. So when he says political, he's of course referring to, and he doesn't mention the name because he's very polite like that, but those of us who understand, we know that he's talking about Mohandas K. Gandhi, who he led a civil disobedience movement, and he fasted and had this idea of nonviolence, etc. And so the details of his idea were in line with Shastra, but the principles weren't. So fasting for political reasons is external, just like austerity, or what I was saying before, if we're just working a job and we're sacrificing some of our material comforts initially so that we can get better material comforts later, fasting for political reasons is the same mentality. It's doing something to change an external situation, right? So our Srila Prabhupada, when he first met his spiritual master, he was very much into this movement of Gandhi. And so he was thinking, we have to first liberate India from its rule from these, what are they called? Colonizers, right? The British, when they come in. And only after we become free from this, this outside influence can we then seriously engage in spirituality. And this is the argument that our Srila Prabhupada made to his spiritual master when they first met. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur pointed out that no, nothing material, no material anything can hold us back from spiritual growth. And to think in this way is a mistake, right? So if we use our so-called austerity just to make a material situation better, then that is actually a waste of austerity. So it's not that all fasting is bad, it's just that fasting for political or otherwise purposes are bad. So we covered political, and then otherwise would be if it's just for health reasons so that we can enjoy better, then no good. But both of these things, political or for health reasons, they actually both can be used in Krishna service if the principle is actually being observed. And if that's being observed, then sure, there can be political changes, but only if they're based on the Shastra and only if they're going to actually benefit all of society, not just make a better material situation, right? It has to be actually focused on that principle. And same with fasting. You can make sure that your body is healthy so that you can engage in Krishna service better, or you can make sure that your body is healthy so that you can enjoy better. So it's all in the consciousness. It's not in the actual item. So as Srila Prabhupada pointed out, fasting twice or 4 times a month. So twice means the Ekadashis, and then sometimes there are other festivals. So sometimes it's more than twice. And when we fast on these days, we're not doing it just so, we feel some sort of discomfort, and it reminds us that, we're not the most important thing in the world. But we do it so we can understand Krishna. We focus on Krishna. So on days, pardon me, on appearance days or disappearance days, we are to remember these great personalities and what they've done for the world and what they've done for us personally. And so when we're fasting, our body is reminding us that something is different today, right? The stomach is growling, and when we walk through the kitchen, we're subconsciously reaching for this, the snacks or the refrigerator. And when this happens on a fast day, when these subconscious things are making us do things or reminding us that, hey, you didn't eat yet, and then that's just an impetus for us to remember these great personalities, right? It's not just to go through some unnecessary suffering, it's to actually remember and to appreciate these different personalities so that our focus can be not on, our personal comfort, but on the appreciation that we have for these great souls that have, done all these wonderful things for us and are giving us a nice example to follow. So that's austerity. Then cleanliness. Similarly, cleanliness is necessary both for the body and for the mind. Or mind and the body. Simply body cleanliness may help to some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary, and it is effected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. No one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. A godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God. And for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have good qualifications, however they may be materially equipped. We have to see things by their resultant action. The resultant action of human civilization in the age of Kali is dissatisfaction. So everyone is anxious to get peace of mind. This peace of mind was complete in Satya age because of the existence of the above mentioned attributes of the human beings. Okay, so before we get, or I'll finish the idea actually. Gradually, these attributes have diminished in the Treta Yuga to 3/4, in the Dwarpa to half, in this age of Kali to 1/4, which is also gradually diminishing on account of prevailing untruthfulness. So before we get to the untruthfulness, so the cleanliness there for the mind and the body. So as Srila Prabhupada points out, just keeping the body clean, that helps to some extent. But more importantly is keeping the mind clean. And keeping the mind clean means knowing actually our identification. So instead of identifying with the false ego that we are independent from Krishna and that we can control and enjoy separately from him, we are to identify with our real ego as the servant of Krishna. So that's how one cleanses the mind. And in order to do that, the intelligence also must be cleansed through study of Shastra, through accepting the orders of the spiritual master, and through following the examples of the sadhus. So as Srila Prabhupada points out, this comes from glorifying the Supreme Lord, right? So Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the dust that is surrounding the heart that has accumulated because of our desire to enjoy separately from the Lord, that becomes cleansed by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, by glorifying the Supreme Lord. So this is what this particular section is saying. And then Srila Prabhupada is clarifying that godless civilization, they cannot be cleansed. They cannot cleanse the mind because they don't have any idea of God. So if we don't accept that there is this higher power and they are superior to us and that we are just servants of said higher power, then the mind cannot be cleansed. That is the definition of a dirty mind, having the improper consciousness. So we see a theme running here, right? So for the austerity, if we're thinking ourselves the center and we're basing our austerity on another material benefit, then that's not actually religion. That's a shadow of religion. It may look like religion, because there's fasting and there's, all of these things, but, and there's voluntarily accepting, discomfort in order to make something better. But if it's personally motivated, self-motivated, then it's not actually religion. And same with cleanliness, right? If we're just trying to keep the body clean and on the surface we're saying the right words and it looks like maybe, okay, the mind's clean, but if the consciousness isn't that, no, I am the servant of Krishna and everything I'm doing is engaging in Krishna's service, then that's not actually cleanliness, right? So then, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out, and we just read that gradually in these yugas, these pillars of religion are diminished. And in this Kali Yuga, the last like truthfulness is being diminished on account of untruthfulness, right? So Srila Prabhupada continues, by pride, either artificial or real, the resultant action of austerity is spoiled. So now he's going by what destroys each leg. So pride, meaning identifying with the false ego, thinking that we are independent controllers and enjoyers, that destroys austerity. Because why if we if we were not independent enjoyers, what would be the purpose of doing these austerities, right? By too much affection for female association, cleanliness is spoiled. Right? Again, too much affection for female association means we are identifying as the body and we are identifying as controllers and enjoyers, right? So therefore, the cleanliness will be spoiled, the cleanliness of the mind. We're not recognizing the Supreme Lord. That's the common theme here, not recognizing the Supreme Lord. By too much addiction to intoxication, mercy is spoiled. Again, thinking ourselves the individual controllers and enjoyers, if we're just trying to pique our senses, or because intoxication can go either way, it can be stimulants or depressants. So one is trying to make us feel better, and the other one is trying to make us forget about the worst things that happened in our life, right? But both are very much based on being self-centric, thinking ourselves the doer. So either trying to make ourselves happier or trying to forget all of the pain in our life. So by doing that, mercy is then spoiled. And Srila Prabhupada continues, and by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled, right? So when the general conversations, not just, news and these sort of things, but when the general conversations between people are just based on lies because we're trying to either impress the other people or, for whatever reason, when it's not based on, when it's just lying propaganda, then in general, this idea of truthfulness is spoiled when it's not based on actual facts coming from Shruti, Smriti, the Puranas, the Pancharatra, etc. So then, of course, Srila Prabhupada ends us on a note of hope, because first he told us what these primary regulative observances are, what religion is, how it stands, and then he told us how they're destroyed, and how in the current age that we're in, they're practically not existing at all. But he wants to end us on a line of hope. So he says, the revival of Bhagavat Dharma can save human civilization from falling prey to evils of all description. So fear not that all of these things that we just read are just terrifyingly horrible, that none of us would actually want to experience. Because if we actually revive Bhagavat Dharma, if we actually read the Bhagavat, the Shastras, and we act accordingly, then human civilization, at least as a microcosm, those who are actually following and those who agree to follow, they will no longer fall prey to these evils, because it means there's a direct correlation between those who follow Dharma, Bhagavat Dharma, and those who do not. And the resultant actions that come along with that, there's, like I said, there's a correlation there. So those who follow, they don't have to worry about these things. They may observe these things, but it doesn't affect those who actually follow. And so, as we've also pointed out in this section, that Maharaj Parikshit is going to end up giving Kali personified 5 places in which he can dwell, because he was begging for mercy. He said, please, I am also one of your citizens. I'm repenting. Please give me some place where I don't have to fear being punished, where I can just exist, that, it's not a problem. And so Maharaj Parikshit gave him these 5 places: anywhere there's animal slaughter, anywhere there's intoxication going on, anywhere illicit sexual connections are happening, and anywhere that there is gambling. And then the 5th is anywhere gold is hoarded. So where people are thinking, okay, this gold is mine, and so therefore I'm gonna, hold on to it. I'm not going to use it for anything proper, and I'm just going to collect it because it's I, me, and mine, right? I'm not using it for any purpose. And so, because where any of these things happen, those will weaken the legs of religion, because each of those is thinking that I am the doer, I am the independent controller and enjoyer. So, as Srila Prabhupada points out, human civilization can be saved from falling prey to these evils of all descriptions, not just these, but any other ones that you can imagine that sound horrible, just by reviving Bhagavat Dharma. So living our lives according to the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, the Pancharatra, etc. So that being said, are there any questions or further elaborations or realizations that anyone else would like to share at this point?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai
I
Prabhupada.
would just like to share, Charuchandra, how wonderfully informative, exacting, and with a full intent to help people understand this aspect of knowledge, such wonderful descriptions and connections about what each aspect of the legs of Dharma mean, how they affect us as living entities and as aspiring Vaishnavas, as well as where and how we can be affected. Very, very, very nice. And I'm saying that as a person who has had and I'm not bragging, the benefit of hearing many amazing Vaishnavas, some who are no longer on the planet, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, your Guru Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, so many, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, speak and elaborate on these subjects in a way with which you did give also a certain amount of seriousness, so that we can understand that these things are not to be put in a closet, not to be ignored even slightly, but to also be inspired that it's possible to continue on this path with enthusiasm. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, Srila Prabhupada did a great job in this purport, really pointing out what each of these things mean. And sometimes he just, he'll word something in a way where if you've read the rest of what he's said over and over, you'll see, oh, okay. So, like where he was talking about Gandhi, but didn't exactly say who he was talking about, or, these other things. So it's all actually Srila Prabhupada. It's just a matter of knowing where else he said it and what he's referring to. And everything there was from Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
No, exactly. Of course, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I just wanted to thank you as the servant sharing it in a particular way, being a tool for Srila Prabhupada at this moment that helps with absorption. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, what I was thinking was that point about fasting or any of these principles being observed for the purpose of spiritual realization. Fasting, for Ekadasi is one thing, but fasting for political reasons are fashionable. All the movie actors, actresses, for their bodies, they are going through so many austerities, and the popularity of all of that. But if it is not connected to Krishna, then it is meaningless. That was when I was growing up, we grew up talking about Mahatma Gandhi, and on one side it was that, on the other side there was the movie actors. When for a very long time when I was growing up, men would not have earrings on, and if Brahmin boys were if they got their ears pierced, it was like, oh, why do boys have to have earrings on? But now I understand, for fashion, if they have it, it's okay. But if it was for religious principles, it was not okay, and how messed up we were in our thinking. And like she was saying, thank you to Prabhupada for clarifying these things and explaining them the way they are supposed to be understood. I mean, no amount of dandavats to Prabhupada will be enough, I think, to help us in helping us understand these things, and how, I mean, how off track we were, and how he has helped us get back on track.
Yes, we have no idea how much we are indebted to Srila Prabhupada. We may feel a deep debt and a deep sense of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, but whatever we feel is nowhere near how much he's actually given to us and sacrificed for us. We can't fathom, and then, and of course he did that just for, for the previous acharyas. So that line, that dedication, the sincerity, and all the austerity that comes along, the austerity of just him leaving India with the little that he had, just because his spiritual master told him to preach, and that was his life and soul. And he did that for Krishna. He didn't do that because he wanted to become a famous football star or something like that. And so therefore, Olympic things like that. They're doing it for themselves. Our Srila Prabhupada is known as a great person, but he didn't do it for that. He did it for Krishna. And so we see that we can also follow in these footsteps, not to imitate them, but to follow in the footsteps, to take the example. And if we do that, then as he points out there, then the people will no longer have to fall prey to the evils of all descriptions just by reviving this Bhagavat Dharma. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Thank you for explaining for this elaborately. But my only doubt is, this one here, Srila Prabhupada is saying, the mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. That is the main point I'm getting in this Kali Yuga, And not only that, other yugas, when from childhood they used to go to Gurukul and they used to learn a lot of things. But now, whatever hard we try, and the Kali's effect or whatever it is, children are not going into that path at all. And then, one more thing is, like other my children age or something, that age, children when they're young, if we say their brain may not be developed or whatever it is, so whatever you say, they think of other way and they'll be busy in other things, other activities, okay? Means like playing or whatever it is. Sure. But, they should be feeling that, we didn't learn from childhood. We teach them, but not many children will learn. 1 in 100, yes, like Prabhupada was saying, that 1 in 100, yes, they become very good, and from childhood they learn everything. They're very intelligent. I don't know what I can say, but in spiritual way they are very good in that. But unfortunately, not all of them.
Right.
And then it is not the mistake of teaching them or anything from childhood, but they don't want to go into that path. That is the unfortunate thing. Not like Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, like that, So they used to go for spiritual things and they used to learn a lot from childhood. We have a lot of stories about Prahlad Maharaj, everybody. No, those are the things from childhood they were doing it, and they were going into, and some spiritual help also they had for them, like Prahlad Maharaj. He has all the mercy of God,
Right.
That is the only thing I always feel when I see the children, and then the cell phones and other things, they're distracting them, movies, all bad things, they're distracting.
Mhm.
And it's not that not teaching them. They are going in wrong way, wrong path. So how to do this for children from now,
Okay. Yeah, good. So there's two things I'll say, because the way you started out was because, it's said that from the beginning of life, we're meant to, follow these things. So for most of us, it's too late because we're not at the beginning of life for us anyway. It's not too late if we have children, then, we can do that. But for us, there's still hope for us, because all of the negative impressions that we've accumulated through our life can be counteracted by the revival of Bhagavad Dharma. That's why Srila Prabhupada ends on that note. And the way to do that is by glorifying the Supreme Lord, by chanting his names, by preaching, by studying his words to understand how we're actually meant to act. So we can counteract all of the bad stuff that ever happened throughout our multiple lives just by engaging in devotional service. So that's the first thing. So there's hope for everyone. The second thing, as far as from childhood, it's actually, in one sense, because as you mentioned, we give them as much, positive education as possible. But they still have free will, so they can still make the wrong decision. But I will disagree with the statistic. So you said maybe 1 in 10 will actually, do well. And that may be the external statistic, but we'll see that generally, although, see that children tend to, samskar doesn't just mean performing those rituals. It means they observe, when you perform these rituals properly, they can observe that Krishna is the center, right? And that's the idea that you're meant to walk away with from these samskars. Now, if the people surrounding this child who's trying to teach him these samskars aren't following that path, in other words, if, during that ceremony, they're saying, oh, yeah, Krishna's the center, this, that, the other thing. But then as soon as the ceremony's over, they're going off and they're doing many self-centric things, and it's obvious. Then that's what they're going to follow. That's also a samskar. They see that, oh, you only have to be religious when there's this ceremony. And when there's not, you can look at your phone and do this and do that and the other thing. So they're still imitating. But what we as educators, parents, teachers, etc., have a tendency to do is we say, no, only pay attention to me, to the things when I'm telling you to do the right thing. Everything else, don't pay attention. Don't pay attention when I'm doing the wrong thing, because, you're not supposed to follow that. Do as I say, not as I do. We have a tendency to have this idea. So there's a lot of that influences these kids that we don't even know we're influencing them, but we are, just by our behavior, by our actions, by what we hold as priorities. So the more we can become God conscious, the more they will be inspired and encouraged to also become God conscious. So that said, we try our best, but even Krishna himself had a kid that turned out to be a demon, right? So it happens, right? But if we do our best and give them every opportunity and make sure they don't fall into bad association, or try, we can't make sure they don't fall into bad association, but we can be sure they have the tendency to avoid bad association by giving them proper education. If we do that, we do the best we can, then, there's a much bigger chance that they're actually going to follow in the line of God consciousness. Now, there still is a chance that they will veer away, but it's certainly not the, 9 out of 10 are just going to be bad anyway. It's probably actually the other way around, but we just have to make sure that when we're teaching our children, we actually follow through completely, and we make sure they truly understand the, what these bad influences will, how they'll affect them. What we tend to do that in society, meaning, is, parents will say, I don't want you hanging around these people. And they won't necessarily say why or where it'll lead to or what it'll go down to. It'll just be, you stay away from them. And then what does that make us do as kids? We're curious, like, oh, why does my parent want me to stay away from them? Let's find out why, because they're not telling me why. And then you start hanging out with them, and then all of a sudden the drugs come out, and it's they ease you into a life of that's not favorable for devotional service. So, but if we approach these things in a comprehensive way and let everyone, okay, this is what Krishna consciousness is. This is the goal of Krishna consciousness. This is what irreligion looks like. These are the pillars that hold up irreligion. So if you cultivate these things, you'll be cultivating irreligion, and then that's a completely different destination. So if that's all, being discussed in a proper, like I said, comprehensive way, then they'll have all the tools that they need. And then, of course, it's also beneficial to not even be near these bad influences if possible, right? So in a Gurukul setting, for example, ideally, at least, everyone's living that culture, right? And so there's not even as many opportunities to get this bad association, right? Whereas if you're just, in some, some arbitrary city throughout the world, and, there may be another devotee or two in your class, but mostly you're surrounded by non-devotees, it becomes a lot more difficult. It's not impossible, of course, because as long as there's strong parenting and an appreciation for Shastra, then, you can get through. But, it's more ideal if you're surrounded by, actual peers, those who appreciate the same things you do, right? So all of these things can be taken into consideration, and we take the ones that we can, whichever ones are available, and sometimes we'll go out of our way to make sure even more of these things are available. But yeah, no, kids, they'll imitate the people around them. So if like I said, if we're very, very serious when we're either giving them instruction or going to the festivals, but we're not so serious other parts of the day, we shouldn't be surprised if they're staring at their phones, or if they're engaging in these other activities. And it may not even be the parents or the teachers, it may just be the friends, because then they're seeing those activities, right? So
yeah. So thank you very much for telling, but that
sure.
We do our best, like the bottom line is we do our best to explain to them and tell them. But, we take them to the temple and then we tell them, but their association is the one.
Yeah.
Not only that, even houses also, I see children, they're not just not having any bonding, any relationships in the same house they live, but they have their own way of these cell phones and other things are affecting a lot.
But the Bob has his hand up. Sorry to interrupt, but we're getting close to 9 o'clock, and Bhakta Bob has his hand up, and he has a young child, so
he's probably got a lot to say.
Hare Krishna. No, this
Hare
is something I wanted to piggyback off of with what Mother Vindavali was talking about, because it's something I wrestle with. I ask her each Sunday if she wants to go to the temple. More times than not, she says no. But from I guess from an influence side, like, she sees me cooking, she'll help me cook prasad. She helps me offer. She eats the prasad. She likes the prasad. She sees how I guess live my life, how I wake up, how I act, what I watch, what I don't watch, what I listen to, what I don't listen to. So is that a good first step? Is that something I should be focused on more than you have to go to the temple with me? Because I don't want to force her,
right? Because
then I don't want her, as she gets older, to hate it. I see how I was raised. My parents were very Catholic. We went to church every week. And even as I started to grow away from it, it was, well, you're going to church anyway, you know, and that's what I don't want. So it's something I wrestle with a lot. You know, how do I approach it? What do I do? Do I just keep living this and she sees how I live? And, you know, she'll ask me questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And, you know, I try to answer it the best I can. But yeah, I based off of what Mother Vindavali was saying, it's something that I'm always going back and forth with.
Yeah, I'd say that you're doing a really good job with it, you know, giving her the opportunity to choose in that, and having her observe what you're doing, and she sees how it's affecting you, and you know that you're happy doing it. Yeah, it's definitely a very good situation that you have there under the circumstances. As we were also speaking about, in other cultures, it's just, you know, it's accepted. In other words, you don't want to force the kids to go, right? But in other cultures, it's just like, you know, everyone's going to be there anyway. So, you know, therefore they're going, you know, so it's a different thing. So regulation is important, but in your situation, it's good because she sees that you're regulated, right? And she'll see how, you know, regulation is affecting your life. And so eventually she'll also, you know, appreciate that aspect. So yeah, both approaches are good because there are sides of each of them that can be detrimental if they're not done in the proper way. But showing her what, you know, basically what the principle is, that, you know, this is what we do, this is, you know, this is how we do the offering because of, you know, and the reason behind it. And then, you know, you're giving her the opportunity to come along if she wants to, so she appreciates that it's her choice. So yeah, in that circumstance, that's exactly how I would handle it, I'd say.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Call page Prabhu. What would you like to add?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for this wonderful class. As usual, very excellent points. And please accept my humble obeisances. Actually, I have 3 questions. So while the first question is like when we start doing this, I started reading my mind, like in every situation, what my mind is telling me. And there are 3 questions which came yesterday in my mind. Is like, first is like, you know, I was in one of the emergency situation, and it was a night time after 12 a.m. So I had to go and take something from the store. But then in that, I got a feeling while I was going that when we are going out during that time when there is no people much, and we know that in the night time there are more criminal activities going on. So I have a fear of getting killed and or getting robbed or injured. So that feeling is haunting me whenever I travel in the dark, and I try to see that the surroundings are not that helpful for me to freely do anything. So that fear of crime is that's my number 1 question. Number 2 is the question I have is, while I'm reading my mind, like, okay, whatever is happening to me right now, with the interaction part of it, or even in my life situations, I noticed that most of them were due to my own behavior. I did wrong, and I conducted very poorly those behavior, and hurted so many people with my words and activity. But now I have already committed those things, and I wanted to just change that situation very fast. How do I come to that track, that my interaction with people and all the activities, I can really revive it very quickly. So that's third. And third is like having a nature of complaint, how to overcome that, like complaining something, you know, when things with related to certain strong expectations.
Okay, so 2 and 3 are related, so I'll do those first if that's okay.
Yes,
So the
Prabhu.
second one, we this topic has come up, you know, when you actually point out the aggressor, you actually you share with the blame. You know, that was talked about before. Because essentially it's a cycle here, right? We did something to somebody, they retaliate, so they do something against us, so something happens against us, so then we have to retaliate, and then, you know, it's an endless cycle, right? Perpetual, but it's not actually endless. We can end it. Something happens to us, we just, as you pointed out, we figure, okay, this was due to something that I did in the past, and not only that, is I should have gotten a worse punishment, but since now I'm engaged in Krishna service, I'm just getting a tiny portion of it. So then we don't retaliate, because we understand that if we do retaliate, it's going to come back to us again, and it's not even their fault. It's just our fault based on previous stuff. So, and in that way, if we have that mentality and we have that acceptance and forgiveness, then we're also not going to have a tendency to complain, right? Because we'll see that, okay, well, you know, this is what I had coming to me anyway. I'm just going to focus on chanting Hare Krishna, because then doing that, not only am I engaged in my, you know, eternal position, transcendental to this material, but it's also going to stop, you know, stop me from accumulating even more and more and more and more and more material suffering. So it shouldn't be that the reason we stop is because we don't want more material suffering. It should be because we want to serve Krishna, right? That's just a concomitant result of serving Krishna, is that, you know, these material problems don't keep accumulating, right? So those two are related. What was the fear of the dark? I got most of that question, but somehow I didn't understand what the actual question part was.
Yeah, so like because the impressions which I carry in my mind is because I have it's difficult to express, but because we have been exposed to several news in the past.
Okay.
And then I heard like there were like many, because of the skin we look different, right? In many ways to others. So we have that mentalities also sometimes we carry in our heart. And I have heard that many time in the night time, when you go to the gas station or you're trying to do, they may kill
Okay.
you just by gun, you know, gun
Yeah, I
violence,
see.
and those things, you know.
I see. Yeah, I understand. Okay. So then in general, obviously, you know, whatever the part that you can get from Shastra, which is that, you know, there are just certain times that are meant for certain things. But in certain circumstances, pardon me, there are exceptions. So sometimes we find ourselves out late at night. So when we do, it's not that we should be afraid of these things. We can be aware of what influences are out there, but we should also have complete faith that since the situation, right? Say we're coming home from a program that was very far away, and that's why we're out late at night, right? So we say, okay, but I'm out late at night not because I'm trying to enjoy the nightlife, etc. I'm doing it in service to Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is going to protect me from all of these other elements as long as I stay focused on serving Krishna. And so if that's the consciousness, then it's no problem. But if we try to take it where, well, if Krishna's going to protect me anyway, then I can, you know, hang out every night, then that's not the proper consciousness, right? Do you understand the difference?
Mm.
You see that? So if we're focused on our service, there will be times where we're in less than ideal situations. We see that Srila Prabhupada actually found himself in less than ideal situations quite often in his preaching, right? And but since he was so focused on his service, none of it affected him. So as much as we can be focused on our service, that's how little will be affected by these external things. So we just have to keep cultivating more and more, and you know, follow the Shastra to the best of our ability. But in situations like that where we're in a less than ideal situation, just keep that faith, keep that focus, keep praying to Krishna, and these things can't actually harm us if we have that mentality. Because even if they externally happen, if our consciousness is in the proper place, then we're okay, right? And so that's what we have to learn, is shifting our fear from the externals of this body and then just bringing them to the actual point of, we should be more anxious about what's going to happen to our soul in the next life than what's going to happen to my body in this life, right? So once we shift that to give the soul more priority than the body, right? That's more Krishna conscious instead of bodily conscious or self-conscious. So it's a gradual process. It's little by little. So the more we read, the more we associate with the devotees, and the more instructions we take from the spiritual master as our life and soul, the more we realize that, oh yeah, all of these things that I've been engaging in are temporary. And we know these things in theory, right? All of the things that we're accumulating, they're going to be gone. All of all of it, everyone's going to die. These bodies will come to an end. They're material. So we put just the right amount of priority in maintaining them, based on what the Shastra tells us. The Shastra tells us, if we're a parent, a teacher, a king, etc., that we have to take care of our subordinates. So if you have kids, then you take care of your kids. You do that. You make sure they're fed. You make sure they're sheltered. You make sure they have access to spiritual enlightenment. Give them a nice, inspiring environment to thrive in. But at the end of the day, it's all about the service to Krishna, right? So it has to be moving in that direction, because if it's not, then you're just making sure someone's comfortable so that they can enjoy their prolonged prison sentence in this material world, right? So it's all on the consciousness. So these external things have to be addressed, but they have to be addressed in a way that suits or goes along with the Bhagavat principle, right? And so if that's what the focus is, then everything goes well. And if it's not the focus, that just how this purport started, right? If we try to establish these things based on some dogmas, which means just external fanaticism, it means you may be following the right details, but you're not following the principle of it. Or man-made formulas, which means you're not even following the details. You're just making up your own rules. Then it's not actually religion, because the principles of religion don't stand on those. That's actually irreligion if you're doing that. If you're either following the right process but in the wrong way, or if you're making up your own process, then that's not religion. That's what Srila Prabhupada's pointing out in that first sentence, because this is what they stand on: actual austerity, not just material austerity where I'm willing to work 40 hours a week so that I can have weekends off to enjoy with my family. That's not actual austerity. That's material austerity. Cleanliness, okay, yeah, I use this soap and that. No, real cleanliness is also cleansing the mind by glorifying God. It's not all about me. It's not, this is me. This is I am the controller, the enjoyer. This is, I am the king of all I survey, etc. No, it's okay. Krishna is the king of everything, and so anything I have is just I'm borrowing it, and so therefore I should use it properly in his service. Mercy, same thing. Truthfulness, same thing. So all of this has to be centered around Krishna, and when we're not, that means that's not religion, right? Even if it follows the external details of religion, even if we're reading whatever shastra that we prefer and we're following the details of it, if we're not actually following the principles of it, that is what is called dogma, right? So then that's not real religion. That's why this Srimad Bhagavatam, the beginning of it, Dharma Projita Kaitava, it's kicking out those cheating religions. The people that think that they're following a religion, but actually they're engaged in sense gratification. So this Bhagavat Purana kicks out those ideas, right? So as long as we're focused on the right things in the right way, then we're in good shape. Everything else follows, because Krishna is in control, and we know that. So if we're you know, if the situation happens where we happen to have to be out late at night one night to pick something up, then we know that, okay, well, Krishna's in control, whether it's nighttime or daytime. So therefore he's going to protect me. I'm his servant and I'm doing his service. And so, you know, but at the same time, when it's not necessary to be out at such a time, because that's the time for sleeping so that we can wake up at, you know, to take advantage of Brahma Muhurta hour, then, you know, then we do that when it's possible. So it's just a matter of the consciousness always. And if we focus on that, then there's nothing to fear, there's nothing to complain about, and there's nothing to retaliate. So that's all three of the questions you asked, right?
Yeah. After hearing this, I see myself like, okay, I have not even started anything, you know, making changes in my life. Like this the consciousness, which I did thought about the, like, okay, Krishna will protect me, but it didn't stay, because when I'm thrown in that situation, I kind of wanted to run away from that, you know.
Sure.
And it didn't resonate, like didn't stick with me for like I still have that feeling of fear. And this, so yeah, I think so you're right what you're saying. And I mean, in that way I'm irreligious when it comes to, like, I still know those things, but then I start looking convenience on my end, like, okay, what is appropriate, and then I make my own shastras in that way. So okay, I think so I have to improve a lot in that way, knowing from this.
We all do. Yeah, that's what this Bhagavatam points out, is because we think we're all doing the right thing. Otherwise, you know, why would we be doing it if we didn't think it was right? So what the Bhagavatam does is just clarifies these points for us. So gradually we can say, oh, I thought I was actually engaged in devotional service, but really I was acting according to my own whims. So therefore I'm going to make this adjustment. So these things aren't pointed out to make us feel bad about ourselves, or to make us think, oh man, I'm actually a demon. You know, what was it? You know, it's there to guide us to, you know, because we're approaching the Bhagavatam because we want to be religious, right? So then the Bhagavatam shows us, okay, this is how you actually become religious. Don't feel bad if you're not following it, but try to adjust it so it's more like this. So that's what the Bhagavatam does.
So in a very short way, can we, like, I also got this realization, can we just see every situation as an acceptance, like, okay, this is how it should be, from the will of the God. That is how to put it also.
That's one way to put it. But then there's also, while studying Shastra, we build up discrimination so we can understand what situations we just shouldn't be in. Right? So it's not that we just, you know, sit down in one place and then whatever comes we deal with. That's one thing that we could do. But what Bhagavatam teaches us, and what Srila Rupa Goswami teaches us in his writings, is that there are situations that are more favorable, and so we seek those out, and then the ones that are less favorable, we try to avoid those. So that's there. So it's not that, you know, well, I'm just going to sit down in this bar and we'll see what happens, right? No, you want to try to go somewhere that's more favorable. So that there simultaneously has to be this idea of, you know, what is more favorable and what is less favorable. But in situations where, you know, there's not actually a most favorable option, then we have to just keep our consciousness and then deal with it, right? So we still try to stick to the most favorable option possible, but we don't become discouraged if we're put in a situation that's not the most favorable, and we just say, oh, well, then it's impossible for me to be Krishna conscious right now. No, we say, okay, well, let's pray that this situation doesn't last very long, and in the meantime, I'm just going to try to focus, right? So if we do that, then we'll be in good shape. But yeah, we still have to have this, we have to be able to discriminate what's favorable and what's not favorable, and try to avoid whenever necessary. You know, like I said, we don't want to just say, all right, well, you know, let's just stay out at midnight all the time. No, right? But if the situation happens during, like I said, during service, or you have to do it for whatever reason, you do it and you focus. But you try to follow, the ideal schedule that the Shastra gives us whenever possible, right? And then when it's not possible, then you just try to stay focused on Krishna.
Excellent points. Thank you very much for meditating for me.
Sure.
Hare
We've-
Krishna.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
humble obeisance.
Jai. Vanchakapachubhishta kapasandibhyo vichapatitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.